Hello, Classic Crew, and welcome to my channel where we talk about political and cultural topics of the day in an in-depth and relatable way. Today we're going to be talking about My Unorthodox Life. If you haven't heard of it, it's a reality show produced by Netflix about a woman leaving the religious Jewish community, and it's a problem. Today I want to break down why this show is a problem, why it's dangerous for Orthodox Jews, and why it's not even true. Before we get into today's video, make sure that you're subscribed to my channel and ring that notification bell. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my Substack newsletter where you'll get access to exclusive content not available anywhere else, including 4 exclusive videos every single month. Make sure to subscribe there. So what is My Unorthodox Life? My Unorthodox Life is the story of Julia Haart, originally Talia Leboff. Julia Haart was born in Russia, moved to Muncie, and then moved to Atlanta. Although the way that she tells it, at least in the first episode of My Unorthodox Life, is that she spent her entire Jewish life in the city of Muncie. So that isn't true. She decided that she wanted to leave the Jewish community in order to start a shoe brand, then a lingerie brand, and she is now a girl boss at Elite World Group, which is a modeling agency. She and 3 of her 4 children have now left the Orthodox Jewish community in Muncie, and one of her children spends half of his time with his father in Muncie and half of his time with his mother in Manhattan. Now, the way she makes it sound is that she decided that she needed to leave the Jewish community. She was feeling very overwhelmed, suicidal, when she felt that her daughter, her youngest daughter, Miriam, wasn't being allowed to express herself, aka that she was bisexual. So she left her husband and brought her daughter with her and went to start her own shoe company. When she started her own shoe company with what she says is little to no education, she was able to get enough prestige that she was able to run La Perla, which is a lingerie company, something that made her very happy because when she left the Jewish community, she wanted to reject everything that she had left behind. So she slept with as many people as she could. She wanted to dress in as inappropriate a way as possible. She met an Italian man named Silvio that she married. He took her last name, Haart, which she had changed her name to Haart when she left the Jewish community because Leboff in Yiddish is Haart in English. So that's a little bit of background on Julia Haart. She calls religious Judaism fundamentalism, and she is as secular as they come. She wants to talk about sex with her kids. She wants to carry around her vibrator. This is a woman who has left behind everything that Judaism means. She really just wants to be able to use Judaism for its cultural, fun traditions, and that's it. Everything that Judaism actually stands for, all of the actual practices, she wants to leave behind. Now, something that I want to say is that going on a religious journey, I have no issue with. I personally, if you've watched my channel before, you know that I have gone on a religious journey. I left Judaism, I believed in God, and there were certain things that I still practiced, but overall I went off the derech, that means went off the path in English, and I am now currently on my way back to my faith. So the show follows her transition from the religious Jewish community into the very secular Manhattan world that she's now a part of, and her rejection of normal morality. Time for a quick break so that I can thank Simple for sponsoring a portion of today's video. I recently tried intermittent fasting and I really liked how it made me feel. And the Simple app is the best app for it. The Simple app is a popular food tracker with tips for maintaining a healthy body weight. I tried a 16-8 fasting plan. That means that I fasted for 16 hours and I ate for 8 hours. The idea is that you alternate eating windows and fasting windows. Throughout the day, the app tells you what's going on with your body. It shows you when you're burning fat, and it shows you when it's time to eat. And you can even start seeing results in as little as 2 weeks. In the app, you'll find tools to help you stay on track with mindful eating, step-by-step instructions to make fasting easier, eating schedules to stay on track with your goals, and a handy meal log tool. With a 3-month subscription, it's an awesome deal. And for my followers, if you use my code, which is just my name, ABBY, you will get an 11% off discount for a 3-month subscription. Let me know in the comments if you've ever heard of intermittent fasting before or if you've tried it yourself. And thanks again to Simple for sponsoring this portion of today's video. Now let's get back into it. So before we get into the way the show lies about Judaism and the way that Julia Haart lies about her experience with Judaism and Judaism itself, we have to understand how Haart actually lives and what she thinks liberation looks like. It's actually very telling that this is the kind of person who thinks that religious Judaism is a terrible thing. Julia Haart is a 50-year-old woman who defines her freedom in sexual mores and immodesty. She thinks that the acme of life is sex, and that the way for her to express her personal freedom is by wearing as little clothing as possible.
I was covered up my entire life, so to me, every low-cut top, every miniskirt is an emblem of freedom.
So in the first episode, we see her encouraging her bisexual daughter to go out and hook up with someone on the first date. We see her encouraging her son, who's a virgin and was waiting until marriage to have sex, to kiss girls, hook up, have sex with who he wants to. We see her talking about how important vibrators are and openly talking about this with her children consistently. We see her get angry at her son-in-law for having any standards about modesty when it comes to his wife. And she talks about sexuality like it's just the most important thing. Honestly, that's really the big takeaway from the first episode. So this is what takes the place of religion in Haart's life, is just sexuality and immodesty and really living for the senses and the present and not taking into account anything that could happen in the future. It's also really important to understand that even though Haart grew up in the religious Jewish community, it doesn't seem like she understands what the religious Jewish community is all about and many of the laws that she talks about. She doesn't really understand where they come from. She talks about them in a very vague way from an outside perspective. Literally, she talks about the things that she supposedly practiced from the view of someone who never actually practiced it, from an outside eye.
A good example of Julia Haart's limited knowledge of Judaism is that l'chaim does not mean to family, it means to life.
And it doesn't prove to me that she ever understood what the purpose of any of these laws were. When she talks about modesty, she talks about it like it's an oppressive system only meant to stop men from getting turned on by women's bodies. And if you want to know more about my thoughts about modesty, I will link something up here in the eye and down below in the description box, because I've done many videos on why modesty is important. It comes from a place of treating ourselves like princesses, and that's a beautiful thing. In another scene, her assistant asks her if there are rules for sex, and she says, of course there are. There are rules for which shoe to tie first.
Are there rules about sex?
My dear, there's rules about which shoe you're supposed to tie first, just to give you an idea.
Does she know why we're supposed to tie one shoe before the other? I can tell you. I don't know that she can. We are told to tie the left shoe before the right because the left side represents mercy and the right side represents judgment. And we are supposed to have more mercy than we're supposed to have judgment. That's a beautiful thing, isn't it? The show wants you to believe that Haart's story is a compelling narrative of a woman leaving her community because she was oppressed and finding freedom and liberation in the modern secular world. A woman wrote an open letter to Haart because she grew up in the same community and her sister was friends with her. And she alleges that much of what Julia Haart has to say about her time in Muncie is just not true. Apparently, Haart used to dance at their high school. She was known for dressing really well in the community. No one got upset at her for expressing herself in a modest way. Haart accuses Beis Yaakov, her high school, of not giving her an education and not teaching anyone anything. This woman says that she got great scores on her regents, attended the college of her choice, and some of her classes even gave her college credit. She talks about the fact that in her community, many women have jobs, including her, and that you're not only allowed to be a wife and mother. She also talks about the fact that at the time, people watched movies, people read magazines. Julia Haart talks about it as if none of that was allowed. She never watched a show until she was in her 30s. But in her community, that wasn't the case. So it's just not true. It seems that Haart has rewritten the past in order to make her narrative even more intense. And the fact of the matter is, Jewish women don't appreciate it. To me, it seems that Haart never really made an effort to understand the Judaism she grew up with. She wants to talk about it like an expert because she lived among Jews for much of her life. But if you don't understand why you're doing what you're doing and then you go out and purport to be an expert, that's a real problem. And it's not reflective of what religious Judaism is all about. The show wants us to believe that this is a liberation story of an oppressed woman who left a backwards religion so that she could join modern feminism and find fulfillment personally, professionally, and sexually in a way that she never could have accomplished had she stayed in her insular community. What we see instead is a woman who cares only about herself, who's cynical, who doesn't want the best for her family, or what she thinks is the best for her family is definitely not so, and that she has lied, misrepresented, or misunderstood everything that she was from in order to make money off it and to grow her brand. And that might be fine if it was just about her. It might be fine for her story to be just her story, but she's throwing an entire religious community under the bus. The problem with shows like My Unorthodox Life and Unorthodox is that to the average person, this is a true representation of the religious Jewish community. And how many people are going to know that this isn't correct, or even think to research it after watching? A religious Jew will watch a show like this and immediately be able to pick out all of the problems and all of the lies. But the fact of the matter is, the average person who's watching it thinks this is a real representation of a religious community. And if the religious community is represented as patriarchal, hateful of women, insular, backwards, then why wouldn't they judge that community? Why wouldn't they even hate that community? The result is that people will form an opinion based on the story of a woman who doesn't understand Judaism and who thinks that sex is the most important thing in her life. So if Julia Haart is lying about Judaism, what is Judaism really like? I grew up in a modern Orthodox Jewish community, and the way that Julia Haart talks about the Jewish community doesn't add up. My mother had a full-time job. Many women I knew had a full-time job. Religion was a beautiful thing. It was something that we loved. Yes, there were times that it was more difficult, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't worth it. It doesn't mean that I didn't see its value. I was part of a beautiful community. I had an amazing education. I understood where I came from. I understood where my values stemmed from. And I'm grateful that I grew up in the religious Jewish community. And I'm grateful that I've had the opportunity to explore my faith more over time. So what's the role of women in Judaism? Are women relegated to second-class citizens? Absolutely not. And this makes me crazy. In the most observant Jewish communities, you still have women working full-time jobs. You have women who are in powerful positions. Women aren't relegated to being at home. But the role of women in the Jewish community is really important from a communal aspect. We respect women as mothers, as homemakers, and as the builders of community. Women have so much power in the community. We give them so much respect for having children and raising them to be good, strong members of society. Being a Jewish woman doesn't mean you can't have a career, doesn't mean you can't work outside of the home, but it also means that being a wife and a mother and being a strong part of your community makes you important. And it doesn't make you less important than any man. Everything is a role. We all have roles that we have to practice. So women's role is incredibly important. Not only do we have the opportunity to work if we want to, but the role we have as mother, as community member, and as wife is so respected. And I think that's amazing. In today's day and age, in the modern world, where staying at home and being a mother is seen as less important, or putting back the cause of women 100 years. I am so grateful that I am in a community that views motherhood as an incredible gift and something worthy of respect. And if you're curious about marriage and if it's patriarchal in the Jewish community, go ahead and go back to my last video where I talked about if marriage is a patriarchal institution. Especially in the Jewish community, you'll find that that's definitely not the case. So shows like My Unorthodox Life are really dangerous for religious Jews. People will come away thinking that they know exactly what Judaism is like and why it's such a problem, when they know nothing about religious Jews and nothing about Orthodox Judaism. This show is meant to reach people who don't know a lot about religious Judaism and present the opinions of one woman who left the Jewish community as an important reflection on the insular and backwards practices of religious Jews. Of course that hurts Jews. Of course that gives people the impression that religious Judaism is insular and is oppressive. How often in real life are you going to either meet a religious Jew or even participate in a religious Jewish community? Unlike secular Jews who are in the media all the time, religious Jews make up 10% of American Jews, which is 650,000 people. And religious Jews are focused on raising their families, being part of their communities, studying Torah, and the result is that the vast majority of people who learn something about religious Jews are learning it from someone who left it and hates it, or from someone who knows nothing about it. So when a woman who is living a degenerate life and is being bankrolled by Netflix is telling her story of leaving the oppressive Jewish community, it can only be a bad thing. There's already so much violence against Jews in America. This is only going to give people permission to do more. The violence comes from ignorant, racist people who believe conspiracy theories about Jews and who nurse old ethnic hatreds of Jews from years past. But now we're allowing those who might not act violently themselves to tolerate violence against Jews because, of course, they're backwards. I heard it from a plausible resource. I heard it from a woman who lived it herself. After this show aired, a group of religious Jewish women started the hashtag #MyOrthodoxLife, where they shared why they love being Jewish and why shows like this are not representative of their experience. They've chosen to be religious, and they love being religious. They've chosen to dress modestly, and they don't find dressing modestly to be oppressive. They've chosen to get married and have children and to make that their primary goal. And they love that they get to do so. My Unorthodox Life is a ridiculous, self-indulgent reality show about a woman who left Judaism and who seems to have had little to no understanding of it in the first place. She wanted fame, and Netflix gave it to her. She wanted to live her hedonistic little life, and Netflix is allowing her to do so in the public eye. All of this has been laundered by Netflix into a reality show that is harmful and bad for religious Jews. So that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments below if you've heard of this show, if you've watched this show. I would love to hear your thoughts. If you're not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, make sure that you are and ring that notification bell. And if you haven't already subscribed to my Substack newsletter, make sure to do so. If you'd like to follow me on social media, it's @ClassicallyAbby absolutely everywhere. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!